Welcome to the Actionable ESG Talk series, brought to you by AKFI, the Actionable Knowledge Foundational Institute, the world's first nonprofit industry consortium committed to bridging the gap between ESG, sustainability, and digital transformation. Actionable ESG Talk series bring together great minds to discuss the current and the future state of ESG sustainability, AI, and digital transformation together as reflected in the supply chain. I'm delighted to be here with Sheen, our guest today. And let me go a little bit through his outstanding biography. Raymond Sheen, PMP, and a number of other certification, is president and founder of Product and Process Innovation, Inc. He is a veteran business leader, which brings together more than 35 years of experience in executive roles, functional leadership, and project management across multiple industries. His career spans the service as an officer in the U.S. Air Force, and also senior positions at GE, with an extensive consulting engagement worldwide, which we're going to cover today in more details. Uh, to mention also he's the author of Guide to Building Your Business Case and a contributor to Guide to Project Management, both published by Harvard Business Review Press. He currently teaches process improvement, digital transformation, and strategy at Worcester Polytechnic Institute in Massachusetts. Again, Ray, welcome to our talk.
Thank you, Manuel. It's good to be here.
Nice to see you today.
Yes, sir.
Uh, the We usually start with a general topic, more in the area of, in this case, in the area of trends, and particularly the first topic I propose is to focus on the EU Omnibus and the sustainability legislation changes that impact the construction industry and are also part of your consulting. So the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. And as you said, the EU Omnibus legislation, which just took effect in January of 2026, so just based on when we're recording this, just within the past week, it's taken effect. That has served to delay a lot of the sustainability requirements that the EU had out there, and that's um, the reason for that delay was primarily because of complaints, in particular from small companies, of the onerous regulatory and bureaucracy that was going to be imposed on them. And when we're talking about the construction industry, we often think of some of the big contractors, big material suppliers, but in particular, if you think in Europe, the construction industry is dominated by small companies, small contractors, small manufacturers. One of the companies I've worked with, a small company in Norway, 8 employees, and what they do is they build cabins. They go up in the mountains, build cabins for people. Uh, the amount of bureaucracy that they were going to have to start to maintain, all the paperwork, would have been overwhelming. They would have had to bring on at least one or two more people just to do the paperwork. And so that's part of the reason for the pushback. But the interesting thing about the omnibus is that while it delays the implementation by a year or two, it doesn't make it go away. It does minimize it, in particular for the small companies, but it doesn't make it go away. So this is just giving people some more time to determine how to do this, which may lead to one of our other trends of how to do some of this work, and that's AI. I could see an AI application becoming the group or the individual who, for lack of a better term, the person who does all of that paperwork to meet the requirements, to at least for the filing requirements.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, this example is contrary to the thought that the one size legislation fits all. It's actually, and I think the Omnibus is making now an effort to reduce the number of regulatory submissions, and also for the SMEs, they have to be a major contributor to their customers in terms of sustainability metrics. So there
Right.
is hopefully some relief on the way, but your example, it's extremely strong. I was calculating you have to increase your salary payroll by 25%, adding 2 people to 8.
Right, and that would have been that would have destroyed their profitability, which is why I think there's actually an opportunity here for AI to take on getting a lot of the information and creating the reports. Uh, One of my clients that I work with here in the States, they're not in the construction industry, they're in the manufacturing industry, but they have started using AI in a lot of their reviews of requests for proposal, standards, regulatory design packages. When they get a design package that comes in from a potential customer asking them to bid on a project, they have their AI go through it and tell them these are the key things we need to look at. This is what would be unique or different for us in putting together a proposal. He's commented that it has dropped his typical proposal preparation time from 10 to 12 hours down to 1 to 2 hours. And so that type of a thing could be the answer for how to apply all the different directives. There's actually, when we're with the omnibus bill, it's an omnibus because there's a number of different directives. There's the sustainability reporting directive. There's the sustainability due diligence directive. So there's several different directives. There's the taxonomy that applies to the banks and financial industries. All of those covered in the omnibus bill, but uh, they're trying to find ways to link those a little bit better and easing the regulatory burden, in part to keep the companies in the European Union competitive. Because when they were adding this additional regulatory burden, like I said, if you add these extra people, folks have to drive up their prices. But in doing that now, the companies become less competitive. So that really that is part of what's all sorting through this. There's a bigger dynamic associated with what's happening in the markets, in industry in general, and how does the European companies um, maintain or become or maintain competitiveness in the changing world.
And maybe to add, not only the European companies are uh, in the sustainability reporting, because in the supply chain you'll find companies pretty much from every major part of the world.
Right. And that was another interesting element because in the due diligence reporting, originally companies were going to have to report down 4 or 5 levels deep in their supply chain. So if you're a building contractor, you might have to be reporting in your supply chain about the folks who are logging trees in Northern Europe and people who are mining iron ore in Africa and trying to get information 4 and 5 levels deep was just essentially impossible. So one of the changes in the omnibus bill is that now major companies only have to go 1 level deep. That's all they're doing right now. But companies, an interesting piece of this is if you are a supplier, you're still encouraged to do this, and that I believe will give suppliers who accommodate some of the directives and start doing the reporting. That's going to give them a competitive edge because that's going to give them the ability to say, and we meet the requirements of the CSDDD, and so that's going to give them the ability to win jobs that they couldn't otherwise. We've seen that from the banking industry. Again, there that banks are looking at that. That's part of because they're required to report on the sustainability of their loan portfolios, and so this now it does impact how they're doing. Right, most of their focus has been just on energy, and particular energy during construction or energy use during Some of them are starting to extend it out in energy use during the maintenance of the building. We haven't really looked at doing full life cycle assessment. They have not gone that far yet with most of the banks, and that's just in part because the taxonomy right now says that the banks have to report on the sustainability level of their portfolio, but it doesn't describe what metrics have to be used. So I did a study last year of looking at all the 30 major banks in Europe and how do they do that reporting. And every bank had a different way of reporting. And there are very few metrics that were common across the banks because there is no mandated metrics. So they report on what's either what they find interesting or convenient. They're doing the reporting, but the reporting is you can't compare from one bank to another just because there is no standard metric.
And I want to unpack what you said because you have a number of threads that are, I think, very important. One of them, I'll start with AI, and we have to be aware that AI needs an adult in the room, and AI needs quality data. And as you mentioned, when you have multiple reporting, multiple ways to report, the AI will not fix the problem of misalignment between different reporting, different uh, the, so AI is only as good as the data, and data is still difficult to find in large companies, right?
Uh,
it is there, but it's spread multiple systems and so
Yeah,
on.
the AI is often siloed in companies, and when it's siloed, you lose the ability to link it. When if you actually migrate a lot of your data to a data lake, then relationships can be built within the lake, and the AI is actually fairly good at doing that, of taking that unstructured data, finding the relationships, looking for the patterns, and bringing those together. But when it stays siloed as separate data silos, it's much harder to be able to do those kinds of linkages and interconnections. But
Right.
I do see that as something that's changing going forward.
It is with caution because, for instance, the data may have private or has private data, it has biased data. So all these have to be properly cleaned up and maintained. So you don't want to disclose to your bank everything, for instance. You want to comply but not exceed the compliance.
Right. So that's again a reason for having your own proprietary data lake. You can have all of that proprietary data there, and you can work to remove the bias. You don't need to worry about bias coming in from other places. You have your own company's data, and that's going to be the key to effectively using AI. Is that you have to have your own proprietary data source, and then you can let AI work on that data and create the reports. The reports then become public, and that's fine. But it's generated from your private data, your proprietary data, and that's where you're going to be maintaining. I see that as really becoming a competitive edge for companies, is to be able to get their data into a proprietary data lake that they can now mine and use to be able to really let their AI really drive a lot of what they're trying to do. You know, in the past, I say in the past, just 5 years ago, what was we talked about it was important to have people with experience and knowledge, and so that knowledge management was so critical for companies, is to have those. Today, that knowledge is really data management, because the a good AI algorithm can pull that out and create the information, but I have to have the starting point is the data.
Absolutely. And uh, in my teaching positions, I always remind students that data was made by humans for humans. So you need to be, as you said, be aware of the quality, um, not only the quality, but also the fact that it may have human or has human biases.
Well, and so there's a couple of different there since we're on the AI topic, there's essentially three types of AI. There's the machine learning AI, which looks for patterns in what's often relatively static data. Then you've got generative AI, which is writing reports analyzing documentation, analyzing information, and answering questions about it. And then there's
Hmm.
agentic AI, which is taking actions. It's planning and doing. Um, for these reports that we're talking about, the the generative AI and possibly machine learning, those are the ones that are going to be important, and they don't require nearly as much um, uh, uh, computing power that the agentic AI has. Because agentic AI, it has to get real-time data streams and be working in real time. We don't have to deal with real-time data when we're talking about this reporting. So now, if we're not dealing with real-time data, we're not being overwhelmed by massive amounts of data and continually reprocessing everything. Instead, we can take a static data set, process it once, and write the report. And so a little bit of machine learning and generative AI will go a long way towards being able to meet the requirements that you find in the different directives.
Yeah, and as you know, as we discussed prior to this interview, um, we working actually horizontally trying to find out how this data exchange can take place. And our first step is, okay, how the humans can agree on the data exchange, because
Right.
that's where some of the roadblocks are, right?
And that's going to be an issue in particular for the supplier data of being able to know how deep and I do see an avenue there for some standards to be developed on how to do that reporting so that now I can go 2 or 3 levels deep in my supply chain with standardized data and standard formats that doesn't reveal the proprietary nature but does show, if we're talking about ESG, that it shows what's their sustainability score, what's their social and governance score. It can provide a score for that without revealing the specific
Right.
data, which is where
Eh,
you get into the personal data, the proprietary, the legal problems.
and the problem it's addressed, I'll just go a little bit back in my career path, is based on APIs,
Right,
programming interfaces, which actually allow only a set of questions and answers on the data. So it acts as a protection layer. But
right.
moving, because we are still in the unpacking mode, and definitely you pointed to the AI part. There is obviously another part. It's this shift that you mentioned with the banking industry and so on. We see as a shift from heavy regulations. We started with that and describing why Omnibus is trying to resolve some of these heavy regulations, hopefully. But also the banking industry starts to act as another major requester, a major user of the sustainability data. And absolutely, as you said, green bonds, and by the way, insurance industry as well, they look at sustainability
Right.
as a risk, and they want to know more.
And I think that's where is really going to become the driver for companies doing sustainability. 20 years ago, I was involved at the time with a lot of the implementation of ISO 9000 quality standards and several industry specific ones. And I just want to use as an illustration, in the automotive industry, they had an industry specific ISO 9000 standard of the QS 9000, and the aerospace industry had one, the AS 9000 series. Well, the automotive companies, the major companies, agreed that they were going to require that all their suppliers get QS 9000 certification, and and that just went within a couple years. Everybody was getting it. It was an industry for a while. In fact, I was involved in that industry of doing the training and auditing and getting companies up to speed to meet the standard. On the AS 9000 standard, the big aerospace companies blinked and they said, well, we're going to make it a desired standard. And we're going to say we prefer that. But they stepped back from requiring it, and AS 9000 fell apart, went away. Uh, Companies still did ISO 9000, but they didn't do the aerospace specific elements because there was no mandate for it. Well, this is where I think the banks are going to come in. Is that the mandate here is going to be if it's not through the regulatory and the because of the EU Omnibus bill, we're backing off of the regulatory requirement. Even those companies that do have to report, the threshold for when you have to start reporting has moved up dramatically in terms of the number of employees or your turnover. So many companies won't have to do it from a mandatory standpoint, but it will make financial sense. And that's where the bank comes in. You'll be able to get a better loan for a construction project. You'll be able to either, by a better loan, you'll either be able to get a better interest rate or you'll be able to borrow more money. Like you said to your insurance company, you'll get a better rate on insurance because of this. And so it's going to be the financial incentive. We can say how people should do it because it's the right thing to do. Yeah, it's the right thing to do, but they're going to do it because it saves them money. That's why they're really going to do it.
Absolutely.
That's going to, and so addressing it through the financial and insurance industries, I think will be far stronger in terms of getting the adoption than trying to do it through just voluntary compliance.
Yeah, and it connects actually with some parts of the current standards with the double materiality. So
Right.
it's not outside, as you said, the scope of sustainability and ESG reporting and the standards. But absolutely, it's a step. It's a step in sort of making financially important to disclose.
Right. And again, if it gets me now a lower interest rate, that immediately hits my profitability. I don't have to pay as much interest. If that gets me a
Exactly.
lower insurance rate, I don't have to pay as much for insurance. It's going to have, when it starts impacting your immediate profitability, that's that's when you're going to really see the impact. And I mentioned that because a part of my when I mentioned I'd done the study around the banks last year. Part of the reason for doing that is I was working with companies that were trying to drive the idea of disassembly or deconstruction of buildings. It is one of the
Yeah.
things that's talked about in the standard. But a problem with that is the savings you get from designing your buildings for disassembly, for deconstruction, the savings doesn't happen until the building is deconstructed. That might be 10 years, but more likely 30 or 50 years in the future. And the companies doing that work are not the companies who are doing the work right now. And so, why should I put in the effort to design it for that when I'm never going to see any benefit from it? But I will see benefit if it means by designing that way, I get a lower interest rate on my loan, on my construction loan. Now it makes sense to put in the extra design time because it lowers my upfront costs. When it was only,
Right.
if it only lowers the end of life cost, people aren't going to think about it right now because they're going to say end of life. Hey, my life will end before the building's life will end. I don't care. But now, if it impacts that upfront cost, you're
It's
going to find people much more interested, companies much more interested in doing it.
it, it's locked capital, so the capital stays locked in the building for as long
Right,
as the building is. And I'll take it also to the insurance industry and to uh, uh, private, to homes. Uh, and I think it will be also showing in the homes because in certain areas of the country already in the US, you may not get insurance or the insurance is higher than your mortgage, so you cannot afford it. And this is because of sustainability events.
right. And you're thinking in particular, I'm sure, of things like hurricanes, earthquakes, wildfires, some of those events that we've seen that happen that destroy whole communities, and they've done it on a consistent basis every few years. The community's destroyed it,
Absolutely.
and so now you can't get insurance in those areas.
Right.
That actually was behind some of the motivation for flood insurance. Insurance companies stopped writing flood insurance years ago, and now, at least within the U.S., if you want to get flood insurance, you have to get it through the federal government. You can't get it from your insurance company because of there's so many houses, so many communities being impacted by flooding, and that's something that that's been going on since the dawn of time. You have a heavy rainstorm, you get floods.
Yep. Louisiana particularly, and
But that goes, it's not just there. We think of it there in Louisiana, but that flood insurance, I lived for a while in Iowa and we couldn't get flood insurance in Iowa. And
oh,
we're nowhere
okay.
near a bayous, but if you can have a a heavy rainstorm, 2 or 3 days of heavy rainstorm, and in particular because rivers now the often there's embankments around it and if you break one of those, well, suddenly area that wasn't flooded gets you get 10 or 15 miles are now under 3 feet of water, and that destroys your home. You now get into problems of rot and mildew and everything else associated with that. So it's you. That insurability, I agree. I think that's going to be something that will help to drive this design for disassembly, design for deconstruction, because it'll the insurance companies will be saying, hey, there's this is going to be something that adds value and doesn't cost as much. It's going to save money on that long-term use of the building.
And also will probably connect the building industry with the finance industry and saying, look, if you want a better loan, show me that you're building homes in an area that it's,
Right.
sustainable, if you want, eco-sustainable and so on.
And right now, again, primarily the banks have been using. I don't know as much about the insurance companies because I didn't do the research on them, but banks have been focusing their sustainability view around carbon footprint. And so it's been carbon use, carbon footprint. Some of them just looking at the carbon footprint of the building itself. Some of them including the carbon associated with the construction process. So different. Again, that's what I'm saying. There's no common metric, and but carbon has been the big focus. That needs to remain a focus, but there's other elements of sustainability besides carbon. And
Absolutely.
that's the part that needs to that I think over time we're going to see more of a shift to that, in particular as the banks start embracing some of those other metrics, and we get the definition of some common metrics in this area.
And eventually this will happen. It happened naturally with, not naturally, but happens through efforts to have understandable financial reports, right?
Right.
The
Yeah.
first materiality, if I can say, now are pretty standard. You can read anybody's report and say, oh, okay, this is the line of profit and loss. This is the line of
Right. But that
risks and
was
so on.
100 years ago. Those gap rules went into place, the general accounting practices, and now they are just embedded in everything we do. But when they were, that was quite a shock to companies when they first had to start meeting that. And a lot of the companies when they're first doing their annual reporting, there and doing all that financial reporting, it took a while. But over time, all of your financial management systems, the software you use, all of those now generate those reports for us automatically. In my business, if I need to have a balance sheet generated, it's one click of my on my mouse and it creates the balance sheet. If I need a P&L, just tell it what time period I need the profit and loss over, boom, it pops it out. And so, and that's we will see. I believe you're going to see more and more of that kind of automation going into the management systems and structures that
Absolutely.
the companies are using.
Absolutely, and this is very much in line with our starting of the conversation on AI. So AI is
Right.
being one of the key technologies for generating reports. And actually, I want to flip a little bit the argument. Also, AI can help you to uh, predict, to build a
Oh,
strategy,
absolutely.
not only a report, because in many cases people think, oh, AI will report. It's like, no, but your key business direction is strategy. You have to look forward. Okay, reports are good and necessary and all this, but seem to be only, and I'm joking, only about the past.
Well, and that's where the machine learning type of AI comes in, is it takes that past and creates a model, and then with that model, it can predict what's going to happen. As long as that the data that was used for creating that model is relevant data going forward, it'll do a good job. It'll do a great job of predicting. The key there though is it needs to be relevant for going forward. And so as the business environment changes, as the environment changes, period, the temperature, humidity, whatever, as the weather environment changes, some of those elements, at least as they apply to construction, may change, but also in the supplier environment. If we find that the cost of concrete goes up or goes down, or wood or whatever, those models will only be as they are based upon history. It's kind of like when you talk to your financial advisor about an investment, and they say past performance is no guarantee for future, and that's going to
Right.
be the case here with these AI models. The past is no guarantee of the future, but a good AI machine learning model will have identified some of those nuances and be able to adapt relatively quickly to the changes in that. That's where the robustness of the model will be important.
And I hear the academic part of Ray when you talk about that. Because I have the same with my students, and pretty much I'm teaching them AI, it's a machine, but it's only as good as the data you feed in. And then you need an adult in the room because not, not all the models it creates, all the interpretations are
Well,
correct.
well, and quite frankly, that's a problem that's been around in industry forever.